Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to completely shatter everything you think you know about wealth. Most of us just naturally operate under this assumption that money is a highly visible, straightforward game of numbers. But what if I told you it's actually a visual illusion? What we see out in the real world isn't usually the reality, and the true mechanics of wealth are almost entirely invisible. So let's break down the hidden psychology of money.
Section 1. The Paradox of Wealth. Okay, let's dive into this. To really grasp this visual illusion, we have to start with the ultimate, undeniable symbol of flashy, highly visible financial success from the late 90s. I'm talking about the legendary boxer Mike Tyson. If you were paying even a little bit of attention back then, you know he was absolutely unstoppable, both in the boxing ring and in the tabloid headlines.
Over the course of his career, Mike Tyson generated over $400 million. Let that sink in for a second. That is an almost incomprehensible amount of wealth for a single athlete to build. By all conventional logic, a guy who pulls in $400 million should be financially bulletproof for 10 lifetimes, right?
But then we look at where that cash actually went. His spending was wildly, aggressively visible. We're talking massive mansions, a literal fleet of luxury cars, exotic tigers just roaming his property, and, I kid you not, a $2 million bathtub. It was the absolute peak of flexing your wealth for the whole world to see.
But here is the absolute kicker. Fast forward to the year 2003, and Tyson wasn't just broke, he was fully bankrupt. He somehow managed to burn through hundreds of millions of dollars and ended up $23 million in debt. It's staggering. It really forces us to ask the obvious question. How does this even happen? Seriously, how does a multimillionaire go spectacularly bankrupt while some completely average person earning 50 grand a year can quietly retire rich? To figure this out, we're going to unpack some core insights from Morgan Housel's brilliant concepts on the psychology of money.
Section 2. Luck and hidden risk. The very first psychological hurdle we have to get over here is accepting that we aren't fully in control of our own success. We love to believe that hard work and grinding every single day guarantees a win. But when we do that, we completely ignore the invisible, totally uncontrollable forces of fate.
Let's look at a pretty stark comparison. Back in high school, Bill Gates had a best friend named Kent Evans. Both of these guys were insanely smart, both were obsessed with computers, and both dreamed of building a massive tech empire. But Kent tragically died in a mountaineering accident before they even graduated. Bill Gates, meanwhile, went on to become, well, Bill Gates, helped in no small part by the incredible, astronomical luck of attending one of the only high schools in the 1960s that actually had a computer.
And that brings us to a really hard truth. Success is never 100% skill, and failure is never 100% stupidity. Take a guy like Jesse Livermore, one of the greatest stock traders in history. He made millions, lost it all, made it back, and then was finally completely wiped out by the Great Depression. The reality is, you just cannot control luck, and you cannot completely avoid risk. You can only put yourself in the best possible position to handle whatever comes your way.
Section 3. Getting rich versus staying rich. Now, we usually just assume that the person who makes a lot of money is also great at managing it. But the skills you need to actually make money are pretty much the exact opposite of the skills you need to keep it.
Getting wealthy requires massive risk and wild optimism. You literally have to take bold, crazy leaps. Think of Jeff Bezos quitting a great Wall Street job to sell books on the internet, or Elon Musk dumping his very last PayPal dollars into a struggling car company called Tesla. But staying wealthy? That requires paranoia, humility, and completely avoiding risk. If you keep playing that hyper-aggressive game once you're rich, you'll eventually lose it all.
A perfect modern example of this is Sam Bankman-Fried. He aggressively built FTX to a $26 billion valuation, but he just couldn't stop taking reckless risks. He got greedy, over-leveraged, and went completely bankrupt in a flash. Contrast that with Warren Buffett. Buffett's core strategy has never been about chasing the highest possible risk. It's just about survival. He hates losing money. He plays a very long, very patient game, focusing on quietly outlasting everyone else in the market.
Section 4. Saving buys you freedom.
Now, what's really interesting about this next point is how it reframes something almost all of us hate doing, saving money. We usually view saving as a boring chore, a sacrifice that stops us from buying the fun stuff we want right now. But what if saving is actually the ultimate purchase? What if you're literally buying your own time?
Enter a little concept known as the FU fund. It is simply a pile of money that gives you options. If you have even just 6 months of living expenses saved up, you suddenly have the absolute power to walk away from a toxic boss, a terrible job, or a bad living situation without a single drop of panic. You are no longer trapped by your circumstances. Society loves to praise spending. You buy a flashy new car, post it on Instagram, and everyone in the comments hypes you up. But absolutely no one is clapping when you quietly auto-transfer $500 into an emergency savings account. Yet the truly rich people know that while spending buys you fleeting attention, saving buys you control over your own life. It buys you true, lasting freedom.
Section 5. Wealth is what's invisible. This leads us perfectly into the absolute most powerful financial illusion of all, the dangerous trap of confusing the appearance of wealth with the reality of it. Looking rich versus actually being rich. Let me tell you about a guy named Ronald Reed. For years, he was a gas station attendant and a janitor. He drove a totally beat-up old car and wore the exact same unassuming, worn-out clothes every single day. Literally everyone in his town assumed he was just an average, blue-collar guy barely scraping by.
But when Ronald Reed passed away at the age of 92, the world discovered his secret. He left behind $8 million. $8 million. People absolutely lost their minds. How? Because while everyone else was out there flexing and spending every dime they earned, Ronald was quietly investing in the background. His wealth was completely invisible.
See, we watch a $300,000 Ferrari roll by and instantly assume the driver is wealthy. But all we actually know for a mathematical fact is that they have $300,000 less than they did before they bought the car. True wealth is unspent money. It's the investments you don't see. It's exactly why a billionaire like Warren Buffett still lives in the exact same modest house he bought way back in 1958. Section 6. Emotions defeat the math. So why is all of this so hard to put into practice? Well, it's because personal finance isn't just cold, hard math on a spreadsheet. It is entirely driven by our messy human feelings, fears, and emotions.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean. On paper, the most rational math says you should dump all your money into the stock market and just never touch it. But imagine watching your portfolio value growing steadily year over year until the market inevitably crashes 40%. Suddenly, your perfectly logical spreadsheet-approved plan flies right out the window. Pure panic takes over, you sell at the absolute bottom, and you lock in massive losses. This is exactly why we have to distinguish between being rational and being reasonable. A purely rational plan might offer the absolute highest theoretical returns, but it causes huge panic during downturns. A reasonable plan, on the other hand, gives you good returns but leaves enough cash on the sidelines so you can actually sleep comfortably at night. That's why Buffett avoids highly speculative crypto. He prioritizes a reasonable strategy that brings him peace, not stress.
We also see our emotions get in the way through analysis paralysis. I bet you know someone who reads every finance book, endlessly optimizes their budget spreadsheets, and researches stocks for hours on end, but never actually invests a dime. Contrast them with a person who just takes simple action, quietly buying a basic index fund every single month and totally forgetting about it. The simple action wins every single time.
So, the crucial point is this: the ultimate financial plan isn't the one with the highest theoretical return on a spreadsheet. It's the one you can actually stick with for decades. It's the one that gives you absolute peace of mind. Because at the end of the day, the best thing money can buy is simply not needing more of it. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on today. When you look at your own finances, your spending habits, and your goals, are you playing the game just to look rich to people you don't even know? Or are you playing the invisible game to actually be free? It's your move. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.